I didn't know my life would split into a before and an after the moment a university administrator looked me in the eyes and told me to choose. Choose my education or choose my sister. I was sitting in a cold office with beige walls and framed diplomas that suddenly felt like threats instead of achievements. Across from me sat two people who held the power to decide whether 4 years of sleepless nights, double shifts, and scholarships would survive the week. All legal obligations, Dr. Williams said carefully, folding her hands on the desk, fall under personal conflicts. They do not qualify for excused absences. Personal conflict. My younger sister had been assaulted at knife point in a dark parking lot. I had witnessed it. I had seen the man's face under a flickering streetlight. I had held her while she bled from a split lip. The prosecutor told us my testimony could be the difference between a conviction and a plea deal. And my university called that personal. If you miss 4 days of classes, Dr. Smith added, his voice flat, you will exceed the allowable unexcused absences and be automatically dropped. Dropped. One word. Years of work erased. They offered a solution like it was generous. You may take a leave of absence. A leave of absence meant losing my campus job, losing income, risking my financial aid, delaying graduation, delaying stability, delaying everything. Meanwhile, my sister, my baby sister, was sitting in our aunt's living room 4 hours away, waiting to hear if her attacker would walk free because her only eyewitness chose an exam over her. I walked out of that office with my chest tight and my hands shaking. I called her. Will you be there? She asked softly. I opened my mouth, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to answer, because I was being forced to decide what kind of woman I was. A good student, or a good sister. And somehow, the world had decided I couldn't be both. I'm 22, a senior at a state university about 4 hours from the town where I grew up. If you saw me walking across campus, you wouldn't guess anything dramatic about my life. I always carried the same overstuffed backpack, same messy bun, same habit of checking my phone even when it didn't buzz, like I was always waiting for bad news. That habit didn't come from nowhere. When I was 16, my parents died in a car accident. One day we had a normal life, 2 parents, a messy kitchen, my mom yelling at me to do my homework, and the next day it was just silence, a kind of silence that follows you, not the peaceful kind, the kind that makes every door creak sound like a warning. My sister and I went to live with our aunt and uncle. They weren't cruel, they weren't monsters, they just weren't prepared. They had their own kids, their own bills, their own exhaustion. There was never enough space in that house, physically or emotionally, for 2 grieving teenagers who didn't know how to be children anymore. So we grew up fast. I became the one who watched the clock, who learned which groceries lasted longer, who made sure the electricity bill didn't get forgotten under junk mail. And my sister, Giselle, became the one who tried to be brave even when she wasn't. She was always the smart one. Not good grades because she was scared smart, real smart, curious smart. The kind of kid who read things just because she wanted to understand how the world worked. She earned a full scholarship to community college and planned to transfer to a 4-year university. She worked part-time at a local restaurant to save money because she hated the idea of needing anyone's help. And me, I got into my university on a partial academic scholarship, but partial still meant I had to hustle for everything else. I worked 2 jobs, one on campus, boring, low pay, but steady, and one off campus whenever I could squeeze it in. I took 18 credit hours because I wanted to graduate on time, not because I loved suffering, but because life doesn't pause when you're tired. And we were always tired. Even so, we kept each other steady. We called each other constantly. She'd send me pictures of burnt toast and complain she couldn't cook. I'd send her screenshots of my grades like proof that I was still standing. We weren't just siblings. We were all we had left. That's why, when she called me 6 months ago to tell me she was picking up an extra shift, I didn't think twice about driving home that weekend. I told myself it was just a surprise visit. I didn't know I was about to witness the moment her life broke open, or that mine would be dragged into a courtroom, then trapped inside a university policy that treated justice like an inconvenience. And the crazy part? Before all of this, I actually believed in rules, in systems, in doing everything the right way. I believed if you worked hard and followed the steps, things would eventually be fair. That belief didn't survive the next few weeks. It wasn't a big change at first, just a small ripple, barely noticeable in the sea of everything else we were both juggling. But sometimes, the smallest things build up into something bigger than you expect. It started with a call. When I got to the restaurant that weekend, everything seemed off. It was late, the parking lot empty, except for a few cars, the neon sign of the restaurant flickering in the dark. Giselle had stayed later than usual. She worked at a small local place that had a tight schedule, but things were always backed up on weekends. I hadn't planned on staying, but I had finished my shift early at the university, so I decided to surprise her. I got there just as she was leaving. I remember the streetlights humming softly as I watched her from my car window. She was walking toward her car when a man stepped out from the shadows. I saw his face clearly. I saw him strike her, hard enough that she staggered back. I saw him take her purse, and in that moment, everything else stopped. I didn't think, I just reacted. I immediately called 911 and ran to help her. I found her on the ground, her face already bruising, her lips split. She was shaking. I didn't care about the man. He ran off, and the cops found him 2 days later, still holding her stolen credit cards. The police told us my testimony was crucial because I was the only one who had seen everything happen. And that's when the real conflict began to grow. I called Dr. Martinez, my academic advisor, the next day. When I explained the subpoena, he understood. He knew about my situation with Giselle. I thought everything would be fine. I thought I'd explain it to my professors, and they'd let me attend the trial. But when I started reaching out to my professors, I began feeling the weight of it. Most were sympathetic. They said they would accommodate me. But there was one professor, the one I really needed, Dr. Williams, the dean of students, who seemed less than understanding. He told me flatly that missing 4 days for a court case wasn't an excused absence under their new policy. He said the university wouldn't make exceptions. I told him it was a legal obligation. I was subpoenaed to testify as the only witness. He didn't care. A personal conflict, he called it. And personal conflicts, like legal obligations, were not covered under the university's attendance policy. I tried to explain, I tried to reason, but I didn't get anywhere. I started calling my professors, trying to figure out what to do. I was handed a decision I hadn't expected to face. I had to choose. Choose between my sister's justice and my education. Choose between standing by her or risking everything I had worked for. It was supposed to be an easy decision. Of course I was going to help her, but the system made it feel impossible. And then, the university gave me an ultimatum. I would be dropped from my classes if I missed any days, or I would have to take a leave of absence and lose my semester. I could see the ripples in everything, my sister, the trial, my future. I couldn't breathe. But I also couldn't walk away from her, so I had to make my case. I just didn't know if anyone was going to listen. It all changed the moment I walked into that meeting with Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith. I had my subpoena, I had my paperwork, I was ready to fight. But they didn't care. They sat across from me, calm and composed, as if the weight of the situation didn't matter. Dr. Williams spoke first, her voice flat and rehearsed. "We understand your situation," she said, "but university policy is clear. Personal conflicts, including legal obligations, are not covered. If you miss 4 days, you will be dropped from your courses." My heart sank. Every ounce of hope I had clung to shattered. I tried to explain again. "This isn't just about missing class. This is a legal obligation. I'm the only witness who saw the attacker clearly. Without my testimony, the case might fall apart." Dr. Smith's expression didn't change. He nodded, but I could see in his eyes that he didn't believe me. "You're not the only one who's had to deal with personal issues while in school," he said, his voice cold. "We can't make exceptions, or it opens the door for every student to claim a personal issue. It's unfair to the rest of the student body." I couldn't breathe. This was my sister's case, my responsibility, and the university was treating it like it was an inconvenience. I asked if I could appeal. They told me there was no point. Dr. Williams was firm, like a wall I couldn't break through. "This is a final decision," she said, hands clasped together. "We cannot make exceptions." It was like a slap in the face. I had tried so hard to balance my life. I had worked and fought to get where I was. And now, when I needed them to understand, they refused. The worst part? I had already missed several days from the back and forth meetings. The professors were telling me I was on the edge of being dropped from every class. I would be pulled out of school, and the academic future I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. I called Giselle that evening. Her voice broke when she asked, "So you might not be able to testify?" "I don't know what to do," I whispered, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. "The university, they're not listening. They said I'll be dropped from all my courses if I miss those 4 days." There was silence on the other end. Finally, she said, "I understand if you can't come. I know how much this means to you, and I don't want you to lose everything for me." But that was the thing. If I didn't go, it felt like I was abandoning her. I couldn't be the sister who didn't show up when it mattered the most. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew I was running out of options. But I also knew I couldn't let the system control what I stood for. I couldn't let them make me choose between my education and my sister's justice. I needed to fight. I wasn't sure how, but I was going to find a way. I spent the next few days in a haze of anxiety, trying to figure out how to move forward. The more I thought about it, the more my frustration built. I had always believed that if you followed the rules, worked hard, and did the right thing, things would turn out fair. But nothing felt fair anymore. My mind kept racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Giselle. She had been through so much, and now this system, this university I had trusted, was doing everything in its power to push me away when she needed me the most. I spent hours drafting emails, reaching out to anyone who might help. I called my professors again. I reached out to the ombudsman. I even tried contacting a lawyer, but every time I felt like I was getting somewhere, I'd hit a wall. The university wasn't budging. The more I pressed them, the more they dug their heels in. Dr. Williams kept reiterating that their hands were tied. Dr. Smith remained impassive. No matter what angle I tried, no matter how I framed it, they were unmoved. And I had no choice but to face the cold, harsh truth. The university wasn't going to help me. I wasn't going to get a special exception. I wasn't going to be allowed to miss class for my sister. If I did, I'd be thrown out of school. The weight of it hit me in waves. I felt betrayed by the place I had believed would be the ticket to my future. All the years of hard work, the sleepless nights, the pressure to keep up, all of it seemed meaningless now. It was like I was being forced to choose between my family and my future, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had failed both. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the letter I had received from Dr. Williams, the official notification that my absences wouldn't be excused. My hands were shaking as I held it, but I couldn't look away. It felt like the final blow. I thought about the last time I had spoken to Giselle. She had been so hopeful, so relieved, when I told her I'd try everything to make sure I could testify. But now, as I looked at that letter, I felt like I was going to break her heart. I hadn't told her yet that things weren't looking good. I didn't know how to. The more I thought about it, the more guilt weighed me down. I was supposed to be her rock. I was supposed to be the one who showed up for her when it mattered most. But I was failing her. It wasn't just the decision about school, it was everything. I was caught between two worlds. On one hand, I had my sister's future and my family to think about. On the other, I had my own future, the future I had worked so hard for. I spent hours pacing around the house, wondering if I could possibly make both things work. Could I skip the trial? Could I tell Giselle that I wouldn't be there no matter how much I wanted to help? Could I handle being the person who let her down? I tried to think about my options logically, but my thoughts kept circling back to one thing. I had to find a way to be there for Giselle. I couldn't let her go through this without me. I couldn't live with the guilt of not showing up for her. That's when I made a decision. It wasn't a clear path, it wasn't easy, but I was done waiting for the university to do the right thing. I was going to fight, no matter what. I wasn't just going to let this system crush me. I had my future to protect, but my sister's justice? It was more important, and that's what I was going to fight for. I called Dr. Martinez, the only professor who had truly understood. I told him I needed his help. I was going to need everything I could get. And this time, I wasn't going to let them push me down. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. I spent the next several days gearing up for battle. I called everyone I could think of, my professors, the student ombudsman, even a lawyer who specialized in student rights. I reached out to everyone who might be able to help me fight this unfair policy. Dr. Martinez, bless him, was the only one who truly got it. He had spent years as an advocate for students and understood the implications of what was happening. "You're right to fight," he told me on the phone. "This isn't just about missing class. This is about your right to stand by your sister." But the more I pushed, the more I realized how deeply entrenched the system was. The university didn't just dismiss my case, they were trying to make an example out of me. Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith weren't backing down. They'd made their decision, and they were sticking to it. When I met with them again to present my case, I brought everything. The subpoena, the letters from my professors, the prosecutor's statement. I even had an attorney on the phone, ready to go. But it didn't matter. "We can't make exceptions," Dr. Williams repeated, her tone as cold as ever. "This is a personal issue, and personal issues are not excused." And just like that, it was clear. The university wasn't going to budge. They were protecting their policy, and in doing so, they were willing to watch me sink under the weight of my choices. But I wasn't about to back down either. This wasn't just about me. This was about my sister's future, the future I was supposed to help secure by standing by her side. Dr. Martinez was the only professor who seemed to understand what was at stake. He told me he had spoken to several faculty members about the situation. He'd even raised concerns in faculty meetings about how the administration's policies were stifling students' ability to fulfill legal obligations. But despite the growing support from the faculty, the administration was adamant. Dr. Martinez was right about one thing. The more I pressed, the more the university started to fight back. The system, it seemed, was more concerned about itself than the people it was meant to serve. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. He'd heard back from the university's legal team. They had made it clear, if I continued to challenge their policy, they would take disciplinary action against me. They didn't want me to escalate things any further. It was a threat. The university was already digging in its heels. They were trying to break me, to get me to back off. But I wasn't going to give in, not when it meant sacrificing the one person who had always been there for me. I kept fighting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the whole system was stacked against us. The more I tried to navigate the bureaucracy, the more I realized I was running out of time. The trial was looming closer and closer. My sister needed me, and I was stuck. Then it happened. Giselle called me that night, and her voice was filled with panic. "What are you going to do? I don't want you to lose everything for me, but I don't know how to do this without you." Her words hit me hard. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her future, her safety, the justice she deserved. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this system win. I started reaching out to the student ombudsman again, trying to get an emergency meeting. I wanted them to understand. I wanted to make them see what was at stake. My professors were on my side, so why wasn't the administration? As the hours passed, I knew I couldn't keep waiting for things to fall into place. It was time to take a stand. I was ready to fight, even if it meant risking everything, because at the end of the day, there was only one thing that mattered: showing up for my sister. And if the university was going to make me choose between my education and my family's future, then I would choose her. The darkest moment came just a few days before the trial. I had spent the week trying to get the administration to budge, fighting back against the university's rigid policy, but all my efforts felt like they were slipping through my fingers. My fight had become an endless cycle of calls, meetings, and emails that led nowhere. And then everything fell apart. I got the call from my lawyer. He had spoken to the university's legal team again. This time, it wasn't just a threat. They had made it official. If I missed those 4 days to testify, they would drop me from all my courses, forcing me into academic probation. Not only was my education on the line, but my career prospects, my financial aid, everything I had worked for in college, it could all be taken away in an instant. That's when the weight of it hit me. Hard. I stood in the kitchen, my phone pressed to my ear, and I could barely hear the words. The only thing that echoed in my mind was the realization that no matter what I did, I was going to lose something. If I went to the trial, I'd lose everything I'd built: my degree, my job, my future. But if I didn't show up for Giselle, I'd lose her too. The trust we'd built, the one thing I had left in this world that mattered, my sister. I couldn't bear the thought of failing her again. That's when I realized I was standing on the edge. The only thing that mattered now was whether I could take that leap of faith, or whether the system would swallow me whole. I hung up the phone and walked to the living room, staring at my textbooks, my papers scattered across the coffee table, reminders of everything I was about to lose. It was too much. The weight of the choices, the pressure from both sides, the relentless ticking of the clock, it was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning, torn between two worlds and caught in the current, unable to swim in either direction. My heart raced as I tried to think of a solution, a way out of this nightmare. The more I thought about it, the more impossible everything seemed. I picked up my phone and dialed Giselle's number. Her voice was shaky when she answered. "I don't know what to do," I said, choking back the tears that threatened to spill. "I'm stuck. They won't let me testify. They're threatening to drop me from school. I don't want to lose everything, but I can't leave you alone in this." There was a long pause. Finally, she spoke softly. "I don't want you to lose everything for me. I just want you to be okay. I don't want you to feel like you're trapped, but I also need you. I need you here. I need you to testify." Her words were a lifeline, but it felt like I was losing my grip. I couldn't stop thinking about everything I would lose, everything I'd worked for. And in that moment, I realized the true cost of the battle I was in. It wasn't just about the trial. It wasn't just about the university or the policies. It was about something deeper, something that would shape the rest of my life. I didn't know how to navigate this anymore. I felt like I was drowning in guilt and helplessness. Every decision I made felt like it had a consequence I wasn't prepared for. But what else could I do? How could I look at my sister, the one person who truly needed me, and tell her I couldn't help? I had reached my breaking point. It was the moment everything changed. The darkness, the endless cycle of fighting, the weight of guilt and responsibility, I couldn't carry it anymore. I felt like I was about to break under the pressure, but then, in the quiet of that moment, I realized something important. I didn't have to fight this alone. I called Dr. Martinez. I needed his help more than ever. I had already tried every possible avenue, and everything had led to dead ends. But Dr. Martinez had been the only one willing to listen from the start. He had seen what the university was doing to me, and more importantly, he understood why it was wrong. I'm at my breaking point, I confessed, my voice shaking. I'm fighting a system that doesn't care about the truth. I don't know what else to do. They won't let me testify for my sister, and they're threatening my education. Dr. Martinez's voice was calm but firm. You're not alone in this. You've got people fighting for you. I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in days. But it wasn't just Dr. Martinez who was fighting for me. It was the professors who supported me, the ombudsman who was willing to challenge the administration, and my lawyer David, who had already gathered a mountain of evidence to support my case. But most importantly, it was Giselle. I'm not asking for you to choose between your education and your sister's justice, Dr. Martinez said. I'm asking you to keep fighting for both. I believe we can get them to listen if we stand together. In that moment, everything changed. I had spent so long trying to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders, but I realized now that the real strength didn't come from pushing through alone. It came from accepting help, from allowing myself to rely on the people who cared about me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to back down. I was going to fight, not just for my sister, but for the future I had built, the future that was mine to protect. I called Giselle. I'm coming, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days. I'll testify. I'll be there for you. We'll make this right. She was quiet for a moment, and then I heard her breath hitch. You're really coming? Yes, I said, I'm coming. I'm not going to let you go through this alone. We're in this together. And for the first time in days, I felt a wave of relief. I wasn't alone. The next morning, I called Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith. I made it clear that I would be missing my classes, not because I didn't value my education, but because my sister's future was on the line. I wasn't asking for their permission anymore. I was taking control. By the time I made it to the courthouse a few days later, the weight that had pressed down on me for so long started to lift. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I had the support of my professors, the ombudsman, and, most importantly, the truth on my side. I stood in that courtroom, ready to testify, ready to do what was right. And when I stepped into the witness stand and looked at the man who had hurt my sister, I didn't feel fear or hesitation. I felt a deep sense of purpose. This was the moment I had been fighting for. The trial moved forward, and my testimony played a crucial role in securing a conviction. The man who had hurt my sister was sentenced, and for the first time in months, I felt like justice had been served. But there was still work to do. And the fight wasn't over. Not for me, not for Giselle, and not for the future I was determined to build. The days after the trial were a blur of relief and exhaustion. Giselle called me right after the verdict was read, her voice trembling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. It's over, she said, the weight of those words sinking into both of us. You did it. You helped me. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. We did it, I corrected, smiling despite the lingering fatigue. We both did. But this isn't just about me showing up for you. It's about you fighting for yourself, too. I'm proud of you, Giselle. The fallout, however, wasn't just the sense of closure I felt after the trial. It was the realization of how much I had sacrificed and how much I still had to lose. When I returned to campus, things had changed. I had skipped 4 days of classes. I hadn't been dropped from my courses, but the administration was watching me closely now, scrutinizing every move I made. I knew it was inevitable. They had made their position clear. They hadn't been happy about the attention my case had brought them, especially after the faculty senate intervened on my behalf. But the university had its reputation to protect, and I was a reminder of how far it was willing to go to maintain the status quo. I still had my classes, but every glance from a fellow student or faculty member felt like a judgment. The The tension between me and the administration was palpable. They weren't going to forget what I had done. And the retaliation didn't stop there. Dr. Martinez, the professor who had risked everything to help me, was the first to feel the consequences. He had been up for tenure that year, but the administration used my case against him. They couldn't risk letting a professor who openly challenged their policies stay on faculty. He was denied tenure, a move that effectively ended his career at the university. He told me about it on a quiet afternoon, his voice as calm as ever, but the pain was clear behind his words. "It's okay, I'm not angry," he said. "I knew this would happen, but it still hurts. I've spent 15 years here, all of that, all of it, just to protect one student, and now I'll have to find a new path." I couldn't even put into words how guilty I felt. He had helped me at his own expense. He was the one who saw the injustice of the system and decided to stand up, knowing it would cost him. His quiet sacrifice was something I would never forget. Then there was Professor Walsh, who had spoken up on my behalf as well. A week after the trial, I heard from her. She had been let go from her adjunct position, a decision masked under the guise of budget cuts. Everyone knew the real reason. It wasn't just me. It was the people who had helped me. And the worst part? They didn't even know they were part of the bigger fight. They had been helping a student. Just one student. But that was enough to mark them as a threat to the administration. As for me, I couldn't stay under the same roof. I had fought for my sister, for justice, but at what cost? I looked around campus and felt a sense of alienation I couldn't shake. The professors who stood by me were no longer here. My future was up in the air. The silence after the storm was deafening. I called Giselle again, my voice softer than it had been the last time we spoke. "I did it for you, but I don't know if I can keep doing it for me." She didn't answer immediately. I could hear her breathing, steady and calm on the other end. "I get it," she said quietly. "I know what it cost you, but you didn't lose everything. You fought for what was right, and that's worth something." Her words, simple as they were, helped me breathe again. "I don't regret it," I said, "but I have to figure out what comes next. I need to rebuild." The only thing I could be sure of was that the journey didn't end with the trial. It was just the beginning of something new. The university's response to my case, retaliating against the faculty members who supported me, clinging to their policies that ignored real human needs, had shown me just how far they were willing to go to protect their own power. But I also learned something powerful. I wasn't alone. There were people who cared, who fought, even when they knew it might cost them. And that's what mattered. The fallout from my battle wasn't just about losing my place at the university. It was about realizing that standing up for what was right can be a long and painful journey, but it was one worth taking, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed felt like the aftermath of a storm. The sky was clear, but the damage lingered. I kept my head down. I focused on my work, on my classes, on surviving each day as best I could. It was hard. I won the battle for my sister, but the war against the system felt like it was far from over. The faculty who supported me had paid the price for their courage. Dr. Martinez was gone. Professor Walsh was gone. The ripple effects of the fight were undeniable. But I also began to see something else. The world hadn't stopped spinning, even though it felt like it had. Life was still happening. Giselle was doing better. She had started her transfer to a 4-year university. She was back on track, rebuilding her future with the kind of resilience that only someone who's been through hell can have. We talked less about the trial and more about her new life, her new opportunities, her new friends. The trauma hadn't gone away, but she was moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I had helped her. And the truth was, I didn't regret any of it. The system had tried to break me. The university had tried to make me choose between my education and my family, and they thought they could win. But they didn't account for the fact that the truth was on my side. They didn't account for the people who stood with me, even when it cost them everything. In the months that followed, I began to heal, slowly. I graduated that spring, just as I'd always planned. But the graduation ceremony wasn't just about the diploma in my hand. It was about the people who had made that moment possible, the professors who fought for me, the family who had my back, the fight I had fought for what was right, no matter how hard it was. The hardest part? Letting go of the anger. The administration hadn't just attacked me. They attacked the integrity of the system, the very thing that was supposed to support students. But I couldn't let that anger consume me forever. I had to find peace in the fact that I had done everything I could. And in the end, that's all we can do. Fight for what's right. stand up for the people who need us, and trust that the rest will follow. I knew I would never forget Dr. Martinez and the others who had sacrificed their careers for a student. But I also knew that the real lesson wasn't about the university's failure. It was about the strength of those who stepped up when it mattered most. So I moved forward. I started a job at a nonprofit, working with victims of crime and helping them navigate the legal system. It wasn't the path I thought I would take when I started university, but it felt right. It felt like the work I was meant to do. I could still help people. I could still make a difference. And when I think back on everything, the trial, the university, the fight, the people who helped me, I realize one thing above all else. Sometimes the right thing isn't easy. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't lead to a perfect ending. But it's always worth it. Giselle's future was secure. She was safe, and that's what mattered. My fight for her, my fight for justice, wasn't just about the outcome. It was about standing up, no matter what the cost. And that's something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The story was over for now, but I knew deep down it wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning of something bigger. And maybe, just maybe, the world would be a little bit better because we had the courage to make it that way.